Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Flavor and Fiction. I was actually going to make this video yesterday, but with all the news, everything going on right now, I just needed a break. So I took one. So I'm back, still a little weary, but I'm here. And since the book I chose seems to tie in a little bit to how I'm feeling, I decided to go ahead and do this video. So the category for my 2020 reading challenge was a book published in the 1950s. And I chose a classic, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. I'm sure you've heard of it. And for those of you who don't know where the title came from, it came from a poem by Langston Hughes called Dream Deferred. And I figured I'd read it for you here, just in case. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And that is Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. So Lorraine Hansberry took that A Raisin in the Sun, and she wrote a play based on those feelings. So just some background, the play was first produced at the Ethel Barrymore Theater in New York City on March 11th, 1959. And it had Ruby Dee, Sidney Poitier, Louis Gossett, and more. It was redone, let me see, 1986, again in New York City at the Roundabout Theater. And it starred Delroy Lindo, Esther Roll, Joseph C. Phillips, and more. And then it was revived again at the Ethel Barrymore Theater on April 3rd, 2014, starring Denzel Washington, Anika Noni Rose, David Cromer, and more. And I really wish I could have seen that version. But the play, it's only 125 pages if you don't count the addendum. So it's easy to get through. It's short, but it's really poignant. So let's dig in. So there are technically only 11 players in this, but the main characters, it's a family, the Younger family. So we have Ruth Younger, we have her husband, Walter Lee Younger, we have her son, Travis Younger, her sister-in-law, Benitha Younger, and her mother-in-law, Lena Younger. And these five are living in one home together. So it's not actually their own house, it's a boarding house that they rent like 1 or 2 rooms from. And it's sort of run down and they have to share a bathroom with everyone, and they're just getting sick of it. So first we're introduced to Ruth, and she is around 30. She is getting worn down. The author mentions how she has lost some of her spark. Like she's holding on to hope, but she's a little run down. Her husband, Walter, is a driver for like, I don't know, some rich white man. I don't remember what it is he does, but he's the driver. Their son, Travis, is around 11 or 10 years old. The sister-in-law, Benitha, she is actually in college to become a doctor. And there's a little resentment from Walter because he is a driver. He has tried a lot of get-rich-quick schemes. Like he's tried to succeed in so many things and has failed so many times. And he's losing a little bit of steam each time he fails. He's sick of being a driver. He's sick of living in this rundown place. He's sick of not having more for his family. And he's sick of seeing certain people get ahead and not being able to hold on to the secret himself. So then we find out that the reason Ruth is feeling a little rundown is because it's just one of those days where everything hits you. You look at your living situation. Her son has to sleep on a lumpy sofa. Their place is infested with insects. Everything is getting to her. And when we first come into the story, we find out that the family is awaiting some money. So it turns out that Lena, who is the mother-in-law, the matriarch, her husband, when he passed away, he had $10,000 of insurance money, and she is expecting it in the mail any day. So everyone is kind of on edge, thinking just in anticipation of this kind of money that they've never had before. Because the little bit of money that the mother did have went to Benitha for her schooling, because she felt like it was so important to get her to a position where she wouldn't have to struggle like she does. So Walter, knowing that this money is coming, he has big plans. He has tried to talk his mom into so many things, but now he thinks he has found the answer. He and two friends want to invest and buy a liquor store. It would take $30,000 for them to buy this store, so they each have to put in $10,000. What a coincidence. There just happens to be a $10,000 check coming soon. So he is trying his best to talk his mother into handing over the entire check to him. He's giving all these speeches about how, women need to support their men, and how in order for him to be a man, he has to be able to lead the family. He needs trust. He needs understanding. And, some of what he is saying is true. But on the other hand, you can't really trust someone who you see fail and fail again with a little bit. Before you ask for more, you have to show that you're a good steward over what you already have. So if you can't even handle a little bit of money wisely, why would anybody dump $10,000 in your hands? But he keeps trying to guilt his mother into this. And then he tries to guilt his wife into convincing the mother-in-law, because they have a good relationship. And Ruth has had it. She's like, that's not our money. That's your mother's money. I'm not going to tell her what to do with it. Like, don't ask me again. But what Walter doesn't know is she actually is trying to support her husband. She is sort of hinting to Lena, like, could we possibly give him something? Maybe not the full 10, but Lena's like, nope, I don't want my money to go to a liquor store. That's not what I believe in. Like, she's a very devout Christian. And she's like, I don't want my money to go toward that. So lo and behold, the money comes. And here comes Walter with a contract that he wants his mother to sign and hand over this money to him. But of course she doesn't. She gets up and she leaves while they're having an argument, and she disappears for a while. No one knows where she is. When she returns, Walter is like, what's going on? Where's the money? What have you done with the money? And she tells him, I bought a house for all of us. Now, Ruth is thrilled. She is so excited to be getting out of this little rat hole that she's been living in. That's all she's ever wanted. She doesn't have big, huge dreams of like fame and fortune that Walter has. She just wants to live well. But then Lena lets them in on a little secret. She put the money down on a house in a white neighborhood, in a well-to-do white neighborhood. And they're all stunned for a second. Like, why would you do that? They're nervous. I mean, this is the 50s, and they're like, are people going to cause trouble? Like, what's going on? But they sit down and have a talk about it. And the women feel like, you know what? Let's stake our claim. We are good, hardworking people, and we're going to live a good life. And this is going to be our house, period. So in the following days, Walter is getting more and more depressed. They find out that he's not going to work, and he's basically being like willfully horrible because he didn't get his way. So he's throwing a tantrum. But when the mom is left alone with him, they have a heart-to-heart, and she says, she knows what he's doing, but she says, you know what? I'm going to give you some of the money left over. She said, I put $3,000 down on the house. I'm going to put money in for Benitha's education. Like, that is a non-negotiable. But the rest you can keep. So she hands him the money and says, I want you to go pay for her tuition and then do what you want with the rest. So I don't want to give you any spoilers. So I'm not going to tell you a lot of things that happen after that. But I will interject this one thing. At one point, when they're excited about the move and talking about the move, they get a visitor. And there's a white man at the door, and they're kind of like, okay, what's going on? And he comes in and he says, oh, I heard that you're moving into this community, that whatever the name of the community was. And he said, well, I'm, so-and-so, the head of the welcome committee. And they're like, oh, well, come on in. Thanks, for welcoming us. And he sits down and kind of hems and haws and talks to them for a little bit. And then in his own way gets to the point, which is that they don't want them in the neighborhood. But he presents it in such a way that he's like, not like we don't want you, but he's like, in our experience, we've found that colored people prefer to be in their own neighborhoods. They're happier when they're around each other. He tries to take that stance. And of course, they don't fall for it. They get upset. All hell breaks loose. And they're a little nervous about what may come when they move to this neighborhood. So again, I always promise no spoilers. So I can't tell you much more than that. But to find out what Walter Lee does with this money, what ends up happening, to find out if they ever move, if they get in their house, you should read this book. And again, 125 pages. So a lot happens, but it's quick and it's easy for you to picture in your mind as a play. I really recommend. I mean, it's a classic. Okay, now as far as the flavor portion of this video, you're probably thinking it's a raisin in the sun. So of course the special ingredient is going to be a raisin. No, I'm not a huge fan of raisins. So I chose one of the other few ingredients. So there was one morning where Ruth was trying to get Walter to eat his breakfast. He's trying to talk to her about influencing his mom and all this. And she's like, eat your eggs. And he's like, but, she's like, eat your eggs. He's like, oh, that's all you ever say is eat your eggs, eat your eggs. So I was like, you know what? We're going to eat our eggs. And I'm going to show you a classic quick recipe for a deviled egg. That's right. Nothing too fancy. Normally you make about 12. I am only one person, so I only made 2 eggs, which will yield 4 deviled eggs, because that's all I need. So when it comes to the ingredients, I'm going to post the recipe below, but I'm not really measuring out anything because I don't know for sure what the exact measurements would be for 2 eggs. So I'm just throwing in the ingredients and tasting as I go. So I've already boiled my eggs because I figured you didn't need me to show you that part, because if you don't know how to boil an egg, Molly, you in danger, girl. Okay, so aside from the eggs themselves, here are all the ingredients you need to make deviled eggs. You got your celery seed. Some people don't use it, but I find it necessary. You need mustard, and I decided since I'm fancy, I'm going to use some Grey Poupon Dijon mustard, but plain yellow mustard will do just fine. Some mayonnaise, some sweet relish, which again, some people use this, some people don't. And then paprika on top, even though paprika has no taste, but it just makes everything look fancy. First thing you do is separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. Put these in a bowl, and then we're gonna mash them up with a fork and add our ingredient. Put in a teaspoon of mayo, half a teaspoon of my Grey Poupon, a little sweet relish, just a small dash of the celery seed. Okay, so you just keep adding whatever you want until it tastes good, and then we're going to spoon this mixture into the white. Then to make it fancy, you just sprinkle a little paprika. Ooh, that's a that's a lot of paprika. I've got it on the plate. Hold on, I'm going to pour this in my hand. Okay, now it's best to let them sit in the fridge for just a little bit. Okay, here's the finished product. Just ignore the extra spillage on the plate. I'm going to give this a little taste. I love the crunch from the relish. And the Grey Poupon makes it so fancy. So I'm going to leave you with this. There's a lot going on in the world right now. Please take care of yourselves. Don't be afraid to take a break from the news, from social media, for your own mental health, if that's what you need. For everyone out there protesting, I see you, I thank you, I am you. Stay safe, Black Lives Matter, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Flavor and Fiction.